this video, we're going to go over the basics of dividing monomials. When you're dividing monomial, you're going to have a monomial in the numerator, you're going to have a monomial in the denominator. And what you're going to do first is you're going to simplify the coefficients just like it was a fraction. You would put that fraction in lowest terms. You would find a number that is a factor of both the top and the bottom. You would divide both of those so that you're reducing those coefficients to the smallest numbers possible. So you're going to reduce, put in lowest terms, simplify the coefficients, just like you would a fraction. Second, when you divide variables, the laws of exponents tell us that when we divide, we subtract our exponents. So let me say that again. When you divide, you subtract your exponents. When you multiply, you add your exponents. When you divide, you subtract your exponents. They're going to want their answers to have positive exponents. So as a result, every once in a while, you're going to get a negative exponent. What you're going to do is you're going to take that variable that has a negative exponent, you're going to move it to the bottom, to the denominator, and the act of moving it to the denominator is going to change the sign to positive. So if you get a variable that has a negative exponent, move it into the denominator and change the sign. This is just a real simple way of making it to where it has positive exponents. And this is just a little trick that we can do that's going to make it to where our answers will have all positive exponents. So let's look at our first example. Our first example, the first thing we do is we look at the coefficients. This part right here. We act like this part is a fraction. That means we need to reduce this fraction. We need to find a number that will go into 4 and 6. And we divide both of those. Well, what number will go into, or what number is a factor of 4 and 6? 2. We're going to divide each one of those numbers by 2 and reduce it just like a fraction. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Next, I need to subtract my exponents. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write it up here at the top, always. I'm always going to write my variables in the top starting off, and I'm going to subtract my exponents since I'm dividing. 3 minus 2 is 1. I'll put in a 1 there, but I'm going to change that in a minute because I don't have to write exponents of 1. Then I write down my next variable, always in the top. The only time I'm going to put it in the bottom is when it has a negative exponent. I'm going to take these exponents and subtract them. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. Once you do this, once you put your coefficients in lowest terms, once you subtract, then you need to see if anything needs to be moved into the bottom. So 2m, and this right here has a negative exponent. I'm going to take it and move it into the bottom and change the sign. It was a negative 2 up here. Once I move it into the bottom, it becomes a positive 2. And here is what my answer looks like when I do that. I didn't have to write this 1 here because I don't write exponents of 1. Anything that has a negative exponent, I move it into the denominator, and when I do that, the sign changes. This is what my answer should look like. All the exponents are positive. Let's try another example. So let's try this again. First thing, I look at my coefficients. I reduce this like a fraction. I find a number that will go into 6 and 3. And I divide both of those by that number. 3 will go into both of those. So I'm going to divide both of those by 3. 6 divided by 3, come over here, make a division bar. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 3 divided by 3 is 1. I've got my coefficients simplified. Now I need to start subtracting exponents. What's the exponent on this m? There's a 1 right there. Always start off by writing these variables in the numerator. 1 minus 4, negative 3. So I've got this part, I've got this part. The next variable I write down in the top is n. I subtract these exponents. 4 minus 10, negative 6. Now I need to clean all this up. That 2 stays in the top. This right here has a negative exponent. That means it's going to be moved into the bottom and changed to m to the third power. So I make a division bar. This 1 right here, I don't have to write this 1. So when I rewrite this, the first thing I write is m to the third power because that got moved into the bottom. This needs to be moved in the bottom. Why? It has a negative exponent. When I move it into the bottom, it changes to n to the 6th power. N to the 6th power. So my final answer is going to be 2 divided by m to the third n to the 6th. This is what my answer right here looks like. Remember, if you get an exponent of 0, and when you subtract, you could get an exponent of 0 on these, then you do not have that variable anymore. So let's go through our rules again. Our rules, we're going to start off with our coefficients. Here are our coefficients. I need to find a factor or a number that will go into 5 and 10. 5 will go into both of those. I divide both of those by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So I've reduced the fraction part to 1/2. Now I need to write down these variables. Always start off by putting them in the numerator. 5 minus 5, because when I divide, I subtract my exponents. 5 minus 5 is 0. I write down my next variable, n. I subtract these exponents because I'm dividing. 7 minus 2 is 5. Once I go through this, then I need to clean this up. I don't have to write 1s in front of these variables, so I'm not going to write that 1. I don't have to write this variable because this exponent of 0 is telling me there are none of these variables. So the first thing I write down in the top is n to the 5th power. N to the 5th power. So I didn't have to write this 1. Don't have any m's, and I've written that down. The only thing I have left to write down is this 2 in the denominator. So my answer is n to the 5th power divided by 2. If there's nothing left in the numerator, that is when we have to write a 1. If there's nothing left, if I happen to reduce and move everything to the denominator and there's nothing left in the numerator, I have to at least write a 1 there. So let's look at an example of this. First thing I'm going to do is start writing down variables and subtracting the exponents. 4 minus 5, negative 1. Always start off by writing my variables in the top. Remember, there's an exponent of 1 right there. 1 minus 2 is also negative 1. This needs to be moved into the bottom. And I'm going to do that and change it to m to the 1st power. This one needs to be moved into the bottom and change it to n to the 1st power. That means there's nothing left over in the top. I have to write a 1 up there. mn. My answer is 1 divided by mn. I subtracted my exponents. Both of them happened to be negative. Because they were negative exponents, I had to move them into the bottom. And then when I have nothing left over in the top, I have to put a 1 there. Let's look at our next example. Again, we're going to go through our rules. We're going to simplify the coefficients. We're going to subtract our exponents. And anything that has a negative exponent needs to be moved into the denominator. So let's look at our coefficients. Let's reduce this like it was a fraction. That means I need to find a number that will go into 18 and 8. 2 will go into both of those. So I'm going to divide both of those by 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. I make my division bar. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Is there a number that will go into 4 and 9? No. So I've reduced this as far as I can. Now I need to focus on my variables. First variable is t. I need to get my exponent on my t by subtracting the exponents on my t's up here because I'm dividing. 4 minus 1 is 3. I write down the next variable, u. 0 minus 0 is 0. Remember, I start off with putting these variables up here in the top, and if it has a negative exponent, that means it needs to be moved into the bottom. I subtract these exponents. There's a 1 right there. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. V to the negative second power. I write down w. I subtract these. Remember, there's a 1 there. So this is negative 4 minus 1. Negative 4 minus 1. That's going to give me negative 5. Now I need to clean this up. Anything that has an exponent that's negative needs to be moved into the bottom. So I want to write down my 9. Write down my 4. See if this t to the third needs to be moved. No, it stays in the top. T to the third. U to the 0. That means I have no u's, so I just mark through that one. V to the negative second. That needs to go on the bottom and become v to the second power. So I'll write that over here. V to the second power. W to the negative fifth. That needs to be moved into the bottom and changed to a positive 5. So I'll write that in the bottom. Here is what my answer should look like right here. Next example. Go through my rules. I have to worry about my coefficients first. I need to find a number that will go into both of these. That will be 10. I want to divide both of those by 10. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 10 divided by 10 is 1. I don't have to write 1s in the bottom, but if I have nothing left over in the top, I'm going to need that 1. Let's go to our variables. Our variables start off in the top. I subtract my exponents when I divide. 3 minus 5, negative 2. I go to my next variable, y. There's a 1 right there. 1 minus 10, negative 9. Write down my next variable, z. Negative 6 minus 12. That's negative 6 minus a negative 12. That's going to be negative 6 plus 12. Negative 6 plus 12 is 6. So remember, you may need to write this out like this so that you can keep up. This is negative 6 minus a negative 12. That's going to change the sign of that negative 12 to a positive 12, and that's going to be negative 6 plus 12. I need to clean this up. This right here needs to go on the bottom and become x to the second power. So I write x to the second power. I've got my x's. This right here needs to be moved in the bottom and changed to y to the 9th power. Got my y's taken care of. This one stays right where it's at because it's positive. I don't need these 1s because I have something in the top and the bottom. This is what my answer on this one should look like. One more example. The thing is, you need to start practicing this so that you get used to this, but the rules are going to be the same every single time. You're going to worry about your coefficients, you're going to subtract your exponents, and anything that has a negative exponent needs to be moved into the bottom. So we're going to start with our coefficients. I need to find a number that will go into 2 and 10. That would be 2. I'm going to divide both of those by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 2/10 reduces to 1/5. I may need that 1 in the top. I'm going to leave it there. But if I have something else in the top, then I won't need that 1 there. I've dealt with my coefficients. First variable I need to write down is m. Always start off in the top. Negative 10 minus 8. Negative 10 minus 8 is negative 18. I go to my next variable, which is n. 0 minus negative 3. This is 0 minus negative 3. A negative and negative make a positive. This is 0 plus 3. 0 plus 3 is 3. There's me working out my n's right there. T's. 4 minus 4 is 0. Now I need to clean this up. Anything that has a negative exponent needs to be moved in the bottom, and the exponent needs to be changed to positive. That one needs to be moved. This one doesn't need to be moved. It's a positive exponent. And t to the 0 means there are no t's in my answer. I don't need this 1 because I have something else up there. N to the 3rd power is the only thing I have left over in the top. What do I have left over in the bottom? 5m to the 18th power. There's a lot going on in these, but if you follow these rules, you should be able to divide monomials. Simplify your coefficients. Subtract your exponents. And then anything that has a negative exponent, move it into the bottom and change it to a positive exponent.